Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on the Cambridge Master of Accounting program. My name is Michael Willis, and I'm the director of the Cambridge Master of Accounting program. Let's just go over a quick agenda for today. First, we'll do some introductions. We'll talk about why we built the Cambridge Master of Accounting program. We'll talk about what the program can do for you, how the program is structured to deliver on these objectives. We'll talk about our team of curriculum advisors, our students, and then some next steps on applying. And then at the end, we'll have some time for Q&A. So I am joined today by Alan Jagelinzer, who is the chair of the accounting group at Cambridge and professor of accounting, who also teaches in the Master of Accounting program, and you'll hear from him a bit later. We also have Diane Goddard and Julia Lindridge from our program management team who are here. And we also have a few current and former students here. So at the end, particularly during the Q&A, if there are any questions that the students can speak to or you'd like to hear their voice on any particular topic, they're here as well. Okay, so I want to talk today about really the context in which this program is situated. And essentially, I'm just pulling some headlines here from recent news articles about the accounting space. If you were to just go to the FT or the Wall Street Journal right now and type in accounting or type in audit, you'd see a lot of news from the last 2 or 3 years, and you'd see some headlines that are pretty dramatic and pretty attention-grabbing, like former MEP says fatally flawed MRC should be shut down, U.S. regulator to put the spotlight on audit quality, watchdog threatens audit firms with extra reforms. This type of talk that seems to suggest that the purpose of audit and the way its role in society is under question and it's under scrutiny. And the role of regulators in the audit space is under scrutiny. So it seems to be the sense that audit might not be fulfilling its role or its purpose in society, whatever that is. And we have regulators taking some decisive action in the UK and elsewhere as well. And so this is, in my opinion, some really unprecedented level of discussion and scrutiny and potential seismic change in the audit space. Some more headlines about the types of challenges that the audit profession is being called upon to address. So reporting on climate change risk, accountants will be needed. UK companies face closer scrutiny disclosing climate change risk. Larry Fink rules on the best global standards for climate risk reporting. So climate change is an example of a really serious global issue where accounting might be drawn upon to provide some information. Well, how is that? Well, the purview of measuring things and disclosing them falls under the space of accountants. And so if we could have really good information about firms' resilience to climate risk, in the market for market participants to price the risk, then in theory, that would lead to a better equilibrium. So what are accountants going to do about this? This is a pretty big problem. This is a very new space. It's also a really exciting space and a tremendous opportunity for accounting and disclosure to work alongside climate science and this type of climate modeling to deliver some real change. But that's quite different from what most people think of when they think of the traditional role of accounting. Technology is another area that's changing really rapidly, and the rate of change is increasing all the time. So some more headlines around technology. Blockchain in the future of accountancy. Accountants with data analytics skills are difficult to find. Artificial intelligence in the future of accounting. It's not as scary as you think. So this is another area where change is happening really quickly. Certain organizations are at the front of this and really investing. Other organizations are falling behind, not necessarily falling behind, but moving a little more slowly, should we say, in the space of technology. But this will be a part of your career for the next 10 to 20 years. And it will be an increasing part of your career as you think about these things and these technologies and how they impact your work in automation and robotics and predictive analytics and all of these types of things that are becoming more accessible, and people, accountants, are going to need to lead these type of technologies. So this is the environment in which we find ourselves today. And the Cambridge Master of Accounting is designed to train decision makers who can lead innovation in these spaces and in other spaces. So the purpose of this program is not to train technicians. It's not to train students for an accounting qualification, for a chartered accountant or a CPA qualification. It's designed to train true leaders in the world of accounting and related spaces. The program is part-time in structure. So our students continue working their jobs. They come to Cambridge 1 week per quarter, so 8 residential visits across 2 years. And that model allows our students to take what they learn and incorporate that really quickly into their job. We call this the experiential learning cycle. Okay, so it's different from a full-time program in the sense that you don't have this sort of more sterile separation from your career, but you're able to incorporate what you learn during the week the next Monday when you're back at your job. The program is aimed to help students who want to change roles or change how they function in their current roles, who are looking for career acceleration, who are looking to broaden into maybe more challenging, more relevant, or spaces that they're more emotionally connected to. So some career paths that we've designed to support would be something like accounting firm partnership. I think you'll see a little bit later how our curriculum would definitely support that type of career path. CFO or controller, financial market regulation, climate or social related financial disclosure, finance and accounting, public policy roles. All of these are career paths and spaces that our curriculum is designed and optimized to support. And you'll see, I think, how some of this fits in as we go through the presentation. But at the end, during Q&A, we'll definitely have time to revisit some of this as we're interested. Okay, so I want to turn this over now to Alan Jagelinzer to talk about now. We're gonna go into some specific modules in the program and specific areas of the curriculum so that you can understand how the program actually delivers on some of this content.
Okay, thanks, and I want to welcome everybody to the talk. We're going to start with a little video clip of me, which is kind of awkward, but it's a little bit of the introduction on our virtual learning platform when you enter this change management course. This is the one that I built to help inspire students to think like change agents, which is not something we typically introduce in accounting and finance technical courses. If you've, for example, had an undergraduate training in business, and particularly in accounting and finance, you tend not to get this kind of training. So go ahead and run this quick clip.
This module on change management and negotiations is designed to help you understand some theories of change, and more importantly, to develop practical skills which will enable you to engage in actual successful change management processes. To quote from an early stage book manuscript that I'm writing, change is inevitable. If you're not the one initiating and managing it to the degree that you're allowed, then someone else is doing it for you, and this person may not know how to do it properly or have your best interests in mind. Accounting and related career fields are facing existential change initiatives. These cover, for example, the potential for major changes in audit practice, reporting for environmental impact, use of blockchain and artificial intelligence technologies. Also, there are other change initiatives in accounting that focus on either movement towards real-time reporting, for example, using technology called XBRL, or even towards less frequent reporting, which is advocated by some politicians now. With change, we will always face resistance, most frequently from people who feel threatened or anxious about the uncertainty around change or the change outcomes. In this module, we will incorporate fundamental psychological principles which will help you to develop implementable skills on change management and more specifically on how to manage this opposition. The practical skills that we develop within this module will enable you to gain leverage in negotiating favorable support for your change initiatives and help you implement them.
Okay, thanks. So that gives you an idea, and we borrow from these two books. Next slide, Mike, please. I borrow from several organizational psychological books that discuss sort of how change happens and how we can generate power and influence within organizations. And part of the module is designed specifically to act on a change initiative. So students have to develop a plan for change that they want, and I don't choose their topic, they choose their topic. And then we develop a change roadmap, if you will, so that they can identify sort of where are the challenges, how do we bring resources together, and how do we act on the change initiatives. And then we revisit that in subsequent courses and in things such as the group projects that can be selected afterwards. So this kind of articulates a little bit about this. But next, most importantly, is a quick narrative from one of the students who just graduated. Jose, if you can flip to the next. And he talks, we have this on our YouTube channel, but he discusses the impact of that class, and I'll let him speak.
My project is called Formadores de Futuro, which is a social project focused in students, low-income students that lives in favelas in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And 2 years ago, when I joined the MAcc program, I had a class called Change Management, where we were challenged to build up a project of our interest. We had to structure a project or an idea, and the professor gave us like a structure to fill, like an agenda. You should create a schedule of which process are you doing and how you're gonna do and what you're gonna need, what resources you're gonna need. So by filling this, at the end of the class, I thought to myself, okay, I have my whole project here, just need to implement it. All of the students come from the favela, which means they usually studied in public schools, and public education in Brazil right now is very, very bad. So they wouldn't have a chance to do well in the college entrance exam. So what we do basically is help them to support them in this exam so they can have a chance to get in college. And right now we have like around 70–80% of acceptance rate of our students in college, which is a huge victory for the project. And our students are now coming back as teachers for the project. And beside all that, we are creating a sense of community inside our project. What the program has provided me is much more than that, like being able to create this project and to reach out people and impact their lives, and some behavioral changes on me as well. This is the real result of the program, and I would never thought about this before doing it.
So that's just a brief glimpse, and Jose and I had discussed this project before he started, and then he started initiating the roadmap during the program and during the change management course. And then he was able to rally some of his colleagues, and I think some of them are even on this call, to put this in as their group project. And so he was able to implement the project as a result of the program. And that's part of the design of the program, because we need to facilitate change leadership in our profession. And this is kind of baked into the program. Next.
Okay. So that gives you an idea of some of our content around change management and change leadership. Another area of the program that we think is pretty important is data analytics. So I'm going to just give you a brief overview of our philosophy around data analytics and how we train that. So data analytics is a term that is defined in different ways, and there's no agreed upon definition, but I like this definition, which is using data and computational techniques to generate and answer relevant questions and to automate or improve tasks and decisions. So data analytics in this umbrella encompasses the data-specific tasks that may be more traditional research type tasks of generating a question and gathering data, bringing a tool to bear to answer the question, then interpreting and taking action based on that. And also encompasses things like blockchain and technologies like AI and how those fit into an organization's strategy and mission and can support that or perhaps not, and facilitate the decision making. Drawing again on sort of the situation broadly in the world, this is a result of a survey that was done by Kaggle.com, which is a really popular data science website that hosts a lot of interesting data sets and data competitions and data science competitions. They asked data scientists. This was 2017, a big survey of what barriers they face at work. So these are people that are really implementing these technologies inside of organizations. And the results they came back with, so there are some that are a little bit more technical, like dirty data, which is data that's missing observations, or we don't know how it was generated, or the format is unworkable or difficult to merge data. But then we get into more organizational issues like lack of data science talent, lack of management and financial support, lack of a clear question to answer, data unavailable or difficult to access, results not used by decision makers, explaining data science to others. So there seems to be this gap out there, this issue where there's not a smooth connection between data science operations and leaders and managers and decision makers so that they can communicate and leverage these technologies and optimize them inside of an organization. Here's a quote from an author published in Harvard Business Review. Data science teams know they're sitting on valuable insights, but can't sell them. They say decision makers misunderstand or oversimplify their analysis and expect them to do magic to provide the right answers to all their questions. Executives, meanwhile, complain about how much money they invest in data science operations that don't provide the guidance they hoped for. They don't see tangible results because the results aren't communicated in their language. So this illustrates some of the problems and pain points that we're seeing around data analytics every day. And you've probably seen some of these in your job, whether you're working in more of a managerial decision-making role or whether you're working in more of a data science role. So here's our orientation towards training data science and data analytics. So you can think of master's level programs on a spectrum of technical detail. Low technical detail programs and higher technical detail programs. A lower technical detail program would be something like a typical MBA or an executive program that's a non-degree program, or a certificate, something like that. These programs are typically designed to give overviews of these technologies, to give high-level intuitions of these technologies. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing for managers to know. And I'm generalizing here about MBAs. Some of them go into a lot more detail about data analytics, but they typically tend to sit at this lower technical detail of the spectrum. Then on the opposite end, we have programs in higher technical detail, which are designed to train full-time data scientists and data analysts. Okay, so these would be heavily oriented around statistics and econometrics, and you'd be writing a lot of code, spending most of your time writing code, because that's what your job would be most of the time, is dealing with big data sets, merging big data sets, preparing them for analysis, and writing a lot of code all the time. And if that's the type of career space that you'd like to move towards, there are lots of programs out there that are masters in data science, masters in data analytics. We've seen a lot of those pop up in the last few years to try to train people with business backgrounds to prepare them for careers in data science. The Cambridge MAcc is designed to be in the middle space. So we're trying to train sophisticated leaders and consumers of data analytics technologies. So the assumption is that you're going to be behind these change initiatives and these decision-making efforts. And so you need to be able to understand the technologies at more than just an intuitive level, but at the level of what the algorithms actually do, so you can understand the assumptions behind them, the strengths and weaknesses and limitations behind these technologies, so that you can push back, you can challenge assumptions, you can have realistic expectations about what data science teams can accomplish, so that you can be an effective leader of these processes. So some modules that we incorporate into the MAcc would be descriptive analytics, which is focused on data visualization. So we use Tableau to generate visualizations, both to explore data sets and to understand data sets, and also to communicate insights about data sets. We have a module on predictive analytics, which is focused on machine learning algorithms like neural network and random forest algorithms, and with the goal of making some type of prediction. So taking a big data set, using it to train an algorithm, and then turning that algorithm loose on some new set of data to try to predict some outcome. So this is where students will learn to write some Python code. They'll actually implement these algorithms, actually get a real data set and train an algorithm on that data set. and also cover some of the strategic and ethical angles on these technologies. Analytics applications is where we take a look at how some of these technologies are applied in accounting and related spaces. And we cover strategic issues around investment, blockchain, fraud detection. We hear from a lot of guest speakers, senior partners from Big Four firms and consulting firms. We hear from C-level executives, audit committee chairs, about what's the real state of the art and how companies think about investing in these technologies, and really what is the return. So this is where we sort of bring together all of the technical content and see how it's applied to industry and understand and sort of put that finishing touch on how you be an effective leader of analytics technologies. So that is how we look at data analytics in the Cambridge MAcc program. So I'm going to let Alan go again here on interpersonal dynamics.
Okay, thanks, Mike. So one of the core elements to tie into the change management curriculum is interpersonal dynamics, which is borrowed and influenced heavily by some of the courses in the Stanford MBA program. And this relates to how we interconnect with each other and an understanding and self-awareness around how we interact with people and how they interact with us, and also getting around authenticity in communication. This is facilitated by a gentleman who flies over from Singapore, who is, in my opinion, one of the smartest people I've ever met. And we do this, it's a pretty intensive learning exercise that's all experiential, and we understand kind of how do we relate to each other, and you become much, much, much more tuned into kind of how you enter a room. Next slide, Mike. So some of the elements that we learn include, our perceptions of ourself. And so we learn a lot about how do we perceive ourselves, and we take a look at that before and after the experience. And also next slide, Mike. How others perceive us. And so we do an analysis and an assessment before and after the experience of how do we think other people perceive us, and what do we learn from the experience around that. And we talk a lot about trust because a lot of the ability to negotiate or to influence or to get change is via trust, and understanding how can we actually develop trust and a sense of community. This also brings into this concept that we should discuss here, is that this whole purpose of this program is to develop a trust community so that we have advisors throughout for the rest of our lives. The cohorts are built to fully interact. The cohorts are built to overlap. We expect to be interacting with our students and our alumni forever. And so the idea is that we're building a community, and we can tap into that community for advisory on anything that we're doing. So any of our change initiatives, we can reach across to Hong Kong or to Africa or wherever we're going and get advisors to help support our initiatives. And this course is in part to help develop that sense of trust so that we know how to build that and how to work with each other. Next.
Okay, so I want to say just a few words about another piece of the curriculum that I think is really innovative and really important and significant, partly for the reason Alan just mentioned, which is the community build, and also for just the opportunity to interact with senior leaders around these really current, timely ideas. Every April, the Cambridge Master of Accounting program hosts a conference called the Critical Issues in Accounting Conference, and the topic rotates every year. Our conference in 2019, the topic was climate-related financial reporting. And so for our students, this is a class, and for the rest of the world, this is a world-class conference. So for this conference, we had senior partners from consulting firms, we had climate scientists, we had portfolio managers, we had representatives of activist investment groups, we had the head of public policy from BP, and we had the chair of the International Accounting Standards Board, Hans Hugervorst, deliver our keynote speech over dinner. And the topic was around Task Force for Climate-Related Disclosures, TCFD recommendations, how to implement those, what the status is, what's actually going on, what's the state of these disclosures, from a number of different points of view, from the point of view of producers of those disclosures, from the point of view of regulators of those disclosures, from consumers of those disclosures. And then Mr. Hugerborst gave a speech about what's the International Accounting Standards Board's role in trying to facilitate or not these types of disclosures. So that was a really just a fascinating conference, and a really nice feature of the program. The following year, 2020, we had a conference on accounting for cyber risk. So this had to do with all of the issues around cybersecurity and cyber risk from a financial reporting and disclosure perspective, from a more technical perspective. So we heard from an ethical hacker about how he develops and implements tests of companies' security around their cyber risk. We heard from Alexei Wellman, who is the chief financial officer at Altaba and who was the global financial controller at Yahoo when they had their data breach, and was able to share some really interesting sort of background story about what that's like to go through and recover from at that time, the biggest data breach that had ever taken place. So this conference is a space where our two cohorts that we run simultaneously can interact with each other and build a community that way. We invite our graduating students, our alumni, to come back to the conference so that they can be part of the network and the community. And we hear from some really fascinating, high quality speakers at the Critical Issues in Accounting Conference. So this is also a way that our students can get involved in the co-build of the program so that they can work on a conference planning committee to identify topics that might be of interest, potential speakers that might be of interest, and work with us to build this part of the program. Okay, so a little bit about the format of the program. So as I mentioned, it's a 2-year program, it's part-time, it's post-experience. So our students have at least a couple of years of full-time work experience when they begin the program. It's delivered in 8 residential weeks in Cambridge, once per quarter. And between these visits to Cambridge, our students are engaged in learning activities online, in videos and discussion forums, and in interactions with the faculty through office hours and other conversations. But the centerpiece of the program really is these weeks that we get together in Cambridge. Due to the COVID restrictions, the way we're approaching that for our incoming group is and for our second year cohort, is to meet in Cambridge for those who can attend in person and who want to and feel comfortable attending in person, and deliver simultaneously remotely streaming to students who are not able to be in Cambridge. So again, our students are always engaged in between those residential visits in online activities. This is sort of the overview of how the modules are all laid out over the 8 weeks, and I'll refer you to the website to take a closer look at the titles of these modules and brief descriptions of the modules. At the end of the 2 years, we have electives. And this last year, we offered 4. We offered an elective in equity evaluation, which was taught by the former head of equity analysis at JP Morgan. We had a mergers and acquisitions elective, which was taught by someone who spent his career doing M&A from a number of different angles and has been teaching at Cambridge then for a number of years. We have an elective in leadership and organizations and one in leading social innovation, which is sort of another strength of the business school here. Okay, I'll turn this over to Alan to say a little bit more about our curriculum advisors, who are a really important piece of the community.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, one of the elements of this, going back to the trust issue, is we reached out to certain advisors who can help give us curriculum feedback to make it real world, to make it meaningful, and to bring in questions they don't even know the answers to. So part of this is that we get into discussions about topics and we leave more confused than when we started, and that's still learning. So we actually get to wrestle with people who are leading some of the change initiatives in our field and ask them questions and try to help them think through what they should be doing and give them input. Michael Itz is one example. He is the chief executive at the ICAW, and he came to one of our opening sessions to discuss the state of audit, which, as you know, is under a lot of questions about what should an audit do? Is it doing it sufficiently? Is it independent enough? Things like that. Next slide. And these are just a handful of some of our advisors. So Steve Voskuil is one of our newer advisors. He's the Chief Financial Officer of Hershey. And he is very active in helping us develop a curriculum to support Chief Financial Officer training. He recognized and had intimated with me that, that he doesn't think there's a sufficient kind of a training platform for that. And so he's going to help us build curriculum around that. Next. Carol Robin, I spoke about interpersonal dynamics. She is an award-winning professor from Stanford, previously working with Stanford for 3 decades on interpersonal dynamics. And she helped kind of facilitate the ideation around the interpersonal dynamics course. Next. Greg Rogers is a colleague with whom I've worked for many years. He's been a guest speaker of mine on environmental liability reporting, and now he's moved heavily into the climate change reporting space. He's got major global clients he consults with in that space, and he's also consulted with the Financial Accounting Standards Board and others about climate and how to report climate. Sean Budnick recently left the role as the head of audit innovation at KPMG in New York and is now doing consulting. Next. And Ben Taylor is now the head of, he just changed roles. Mike, do you remember his role? He was the head of innovation at UI in London, and he's changed, I think, to run their climate and sustainability work there. And he's been a very active partner in helping us and giving us access to resources. And this is just a sample of some of the advisors we have, and we're constantly looking for support from other advisors. Fundamentally, we want to learn from people who are doing the action or who can bring us the hardest questions that they're wrestling with so that we can actually talk live, real time. We also have, for example, Rob Lawson, who's the head of global mergers and acquisitions at BP in London, and he's been involved with a lot of BP's initiatives to transition to renewable energy and things of that nature. And he is a key speaker in the change management course because he's led a lot of BP change initiatives. Next.
Okay, I'll say a little bit about the students that we have. So across our 2 cohorts, we have 42 students. So this program is smaller by design because we really value, again, the community build, the relationship between the students and the relationship between the faculty and the students. Most of our students have between 5 and 10 years of postgraduate work experience, but we do have students with 2 or 3 years, and we have students with more than 10 years of work experience. We have a global diversity of students from all over the world, from UK, Europe, Asia, Africa, North America, South America. They come from all over. And they are professionally diverse as well. We have students from more traditional accounting backgrounds like audit, internal audit, tax, consulting, but also students from banking and financial services, from corporate finance, from regulation, public policy, entrepreneurship. And this diversity is quite important to us because the model in the classroom is not lecture-based. It's very much discussion-based. It's very active and energetic in the classroom. And so integrating these perspectives is a key part of those residential weeks. A little bit about funding support. So we have some bursaries and scholarships that we have allocated to certain demographics and people with particular backgrounds and interests. So we have a couple of scholarships for women, the Emily Booth Scholarship for Female Leadership in Business. There's more information about all of these on the website and exactly how to apply for them and the sorts of things that we're looking for in awarding these scholarships. We have a couple of bursaries in accounting innovation and sustainability. So these are for people who either have done some work in these areas or interested in doing work in these areas and communicate their vision for impact around accounting innovation, sustainability. And then we have some bursaries available for those who are making an application from developing economies and are interested in contributing to enhancing the infrastructure in those areas and can articulate a vision for how the Cambridge Master of Accounting program can enhance their ability to build what is needed in their area. So again, more information about those on the websites. but just wanted to make you aware of some bursaries that have been allocated to those particular spaces. Okay, so in the application process, some things that we look for. One is your educational background. So students can demonstrate academic qualification by either having completed an undergraduate degree with a 2-1 in the UK system, or an equivalent, international equivalent to a 2-1, or having completed a master's degree or higher, or having taken or will take the GMAT or GRE and achieving a suitable score there. Those are the sort of 3 ways a student can demonstrate academic qualification. It's actually not necessary that a student have an undergraduate degree. They can meet the qualification standard by having, let's say, completed chartered accountant qualification, or a CPA, or another professional qualification that is deemed to be equivalent to a master's degree in the UK. So if you have questions about your particular academic background, I'm happy to follow up individually offline. We look at your work experience, and so we're looking for evidence of impact, for evidence that you are willing to challenge the status quo, and you're willing to push back on the way things are currently done, and to try to implement change in your setting. And we evaluate this through your essays and through letters of reference. So we ask for 2 letters of reference, one of which should come from your current employer, that can speak to your background and to your potential. English proficiency, which is based on the University Language Center guidelines, depending on nationality, country of origin, and potentially taking the IELTS or TOEFL exam. We have 2 essays in our application that are around change and your experience with change and your attitude towards change. As you can tell, this is a theme that we weave heavily throughout the program. But these essays give you an opportunity to articulate exactly how you think about change and how you have thought about change in your workplace or other activities. And then selected students are invited to interview. It's usually with me, and it's usually done online via Zoom. And we're able to go into a little more detail about what you wrote about in your essays, about what your career goals are, about how the Cambridge MAcc might fit into those goals, and where you might fit into the community. And once we have an application, we're usually able to complete the process and render a final decision within about 3 weeks. We don't have admissions rounds. We evaluate applications as they're received. Okay, so I have my contact information here, and if you have any other questions that maybe you want to ask privately offline, I'm happy to take those. I've spoken with a number of you already individually, and a great way to get in contact with us is to submit your CV online. There's a link on our homepage where it's sort of a pre-application conversation where we can look at your academic and professional background and give you some feedback on how you might shape an application for the program in a way that might be successful. So that's a great way to get some really, interact with us at a low cost prior to making a complete application. Okay, so I'd like to now open this up to any questions that anyone might have. So you can feel free to type a question in the chat, or you can unmute your microphone and ask a question that way. We also, again, have some current students and alumni here who might be able to speak to particular questions, and Alan and I and Diane as well. Happy to take those.
Yeah, I'm gonna start by reading off Chris's. So Chris wrote, for electives, given that the entire cohort goes through the same curriculum, how do you decide on which elective to take? And are there other options offered via JBS in other programs? And I don't know whether one of the students wants to speak to that.
I can speak to it. Hey everyone, my name is John Maslin. Good morning or good afternoon. I apologize for speaking from my car. It's raining outside and everyone is asleep upstairs. So trying to be respectful there. But in terms of electives, I chose to do the leading in organizations and the social innovation electives. For background, I'm in the U.S. Navy and I do finance work for the Navy's nuclear propulsion program, specifically the aircraft carriers. So I personally felt like I had gotten a lot of technical competency work within the MAC, and I did a lot of that at work, and I wanted some more emotional quotient interpersonal work within the electives. So I chose that. I'm not sure if you're allowed to take other electives within the judge school, but I really enjoyed mine because they gave me a little bit of a different taste of what the Cambridge, program and the judge school offers beyond just the technical accounting piece.
Thanks, John. And I can answer a little bit about the other electives across the school. If it's logistically feasible and if we can get program permission, then it's possible. A little bit of the difficulty is that we often don't time our courses at the same time as some of the other programs. For example, the MBA is a traditional MBA and it runs full time. And so it's going to be very difficult in our program to match up the timing of both. But we don't say no. If there's a possibility, we will at least try to negotiate a way to make that happen if it makes sense. In many cases, it's just not logistically feasible. Any other questions from anybody or students or alumni who want to speak? So I'll send this to Mike. For reference letters, can I select peer or subordinate who knows me well to write, or do I have to ask my direct supervisor?
Yeah, that's a good question, Mike. So I think one of your letters should come from a supervisor, someone who can weigh in from a management perspective on you. The second could definitely come from a peer or someone who works for you. And that might actually be a nice strategy to approach the reference letters. It is not necessary for you to have an academic reference letter. Okay, so they could be both professional reference letters.
And I'll quickly add that we really want somebody who can speak to you. We're less concerned about the rank. It's not super impressive to have somebody who's a CEO of X corporation or something. If it's kind of a very light touch on who you are, we're trying to actually get to know you as a person. And so somebody who can speak more with more depth about you and what you're about would help.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. The most important thing in choosing a recommender is someone who knows you well and can tell stories about what you've accomplished and what you want to do. And the title is definitely not the key issue there.
And now we have a question about the demographics on our student cohorts. So is Diane, are you here? Would you have that data?
Yes, certainly. So hello everybody, I'm Diane Goddard and I head up the marketing and admissions of the programme. It's a very good question. So overall we've got quite a healthy female-male split. I think that was part of the question. Obviously varies year to year. In the current cohort who are starting with us in September, well this month actually, next week, the split is about 60 to 40 male to female, 60%, just over about 66% male on that from our 24 students. I think as already been mentioned actually in the presentation, background, geographic background, age, everything is a very, very healthy mix across the programme. I think hope that answers the question. If not, Chung, do come back on that one. But that's where we stand at the moment.
Thanks. And Mike talked a lot about the geographic diversity. I would say definitively that we're working with people from literally every corner of the world right now.
Does anyone have any other questions?
If more than half the students are international, have you considered to combine some residential weeks, given it might be harder to travel post-COVID? That's an interesting question. We've had a lot of discussion about kind of the setup, and obviously the setup was designed with kind of COVID not in existence. I think a lot of it is deeply experiential. So the whole point of this is to actually be together and interact a lot. I think, and maybe we'll defer back to our students and our alumni to discuss their experiences on the weekly residential. Some of the trade-offs include the fact that for some people, it's very hard to find 2 weeks off from work. So if we kind of collapsed or extended to longer periods, for some, it's really challenging to get that much time afforded off from work. But maybe they have some ideas that they want to share about the weekly trips over the trip every quarter for a week.
Yeah, I can touch on that really quickly, and then I think Iris is on too, and I want to give her an opportunity to share. So I was coming over from the U.S., which is obviously a shorter trip than some people. There was a gal in my cohort who's from Australia, and so she was coming over from Sydney every time, and we did have conversation about whether or not we should extend to 2 weeks, because I think that would potentially better fit some people's schedules. But for others of us, like Alan just mentioned, it wasn't quite feasible to take a half a month off of work 4 times over 2 years. But I will say, beyond whether it's 1 week or 2 week, one of the things that I personally really enjoyed about going to Cambridge 1 time per quarter for a full week is I was able to take everything I had learned and everything that was jam-packed in my head and go back to work and apply it and test it and see if it worked. I was able to, actually apply financial statement analysis to my job. I was actually able to take the interpersonal dynamics course and tweak small things that I had learned over that course to interacting both with my boss and guys that worked for me. And so I don't have the answer for whether it should be 1 week, 10 days, or 2 weeks, but I will say I do think one of the strengths of the program is the ability to kind of go and immerse yourself and then kind of get out, go back to the real world and apply all of those techniques to your daily life and your daily job.
Thanks, John. Iris or Burton, or I think Tony's here too. Any of you folks have any follow-ups to that, or Leanne's here too, I believe.
Hey, everyone, this is Burton, if you can hear me. I live in Hong Kong, so it's a bit of a trip to Cambridge, but I do enjoy the weekly sessions, the weekly residentials. I think it's a good opportunity to have that connection with your classmates, and you really get an opportunity to leverage from the different experiences that everyone has within the program. Due to COVID, we've had to, shift the way we interact with the residentials. And I think the combination of having the virtual meetings didn't really distract too much from what we were trying to achieve with the residentials. And to some extent, it really allowed you to look at different ways in which to offer the program. So it was a good opportunity to look at different ways to experiment with the way the program was being delivered. But overall, it was a good experience for me. And I think for those of you interested in signing up for the program, either way, I think the program really helps you to unlock those leadership abilities that the program tries to underscore. Thanks.
Thanks, Burton. Anyone else? Iris?
Hi, I'm Iris. So, I think, I quite enjoyed the whole program since I joined from the first day. So, for the COVID, I think it's really not affect anything, because most of the time we, because of the schedule, so we study by ourselves offline, and then we sometimes do we go back to Cambridge every 3 months. So so I actually spend most of the time to study by myself and do research and stuff. So even though the COVID happened, I think it didn't really affect much. And every time when we go back to Cambridge, it's like a really really good time to see each other, and we have very exciting debate in the class or whatever discussion, I think I enjoy the about everything in Cambridge. I think, yeah, it's a really good experience.
Thank you, Iris. And one of the core elements that we've kind of mentioned throughout is this notion of change and flexibility and innovation. And so we're actually real-time innovating as we go. I mean, nobody expected COVID. Nobody expected everything to dramatically shift around the world, and we're adapting as we go. I think the deliverable of content has sustained. I think if anything's missing, it's it's the interpersonal connections, right? Like we want to be together, and we want to sit in a room together and have dinner together. And so we will return to that. We'll bring our alumni back repeatedly. I mean, we are genuinely building a community, and so we're going to have everybody back. There will be ideally soon a post-COVID environment where we can engage again in that kind of format where we do a dinner at a 13th century room and things like that. I want to move into, so how long have we had this course at JBS, just to kind of get these questions, and then we can circle back. So we have our first cohort, and actually you've heard from a couple graduates of the first cohort. So we are now in our third year. And change management and data analytics are two very important parts of the MAcc program, to answer that question.
Let me say a little bit more about that. So while Alan spoke about a specific module called change management that goes deep into how to develop and implement a change program, we weave the theme of change throughout the program. So when we teach about audit, for example, we talk in a lot of detail about what does need to change, what could change around incentives and governance and policy to help audit achieve its role and its potential. Okay, so when we talk about managerial accounting, the focus is on what needs to change with respect to what gets measured and articulated inside of your organization. So yes, I would say that those are two key parts of the MAcc program, and those themes are woven throughout the program as well as addressed in detail in particular modules.
And even the question of, is anything do we actually need change? Because sometimes change initiatives are implemented and they shouldn't be. And so we even have those discussions in these contexts as well. I'll let Mike answer this. Are your cohort numbers fixed, or do you vary your numbers year on year based on supply and demand?
Yeah,
or who applies?
That's a good question. So our path is to sort of grow organically with people who are a good fit for the program. And what I mean is by people who understand what we're about and who want to be part of this community build in the long term, and who will bring something to this table, right? And whose career aspirations are something that we feel like we can support. And so our approach to admissions is much more high touch and on the front end. And so it's actually quite rare that a student applies to the program without having spoken to me for at least a half an hour, so that we can better understand what the interests are and how we can support that. And so I actually spend a lot of time talking people out of applying to the Cambridge MAcc program who might be better served by another program. So our path to through growth is going to be sort of more slow and organic. So the short answer is no, we don't have a fixed sort of cap, and we can accommodate some growth, but again, with people that fit in the right way, if that makes sense.
And one of the questions, to get to the next question about entry requirements and essays, just to piggyback on what Mike said, this is my personal opinion, but one of the hallmarks of a truly elite education program is when students take equity ownership of the program and their own learning. And so one of the key elements we're looking for are students who become alumni and who throughout the entire genesis of the program deliver input back into the program. And so we're constantly reviewing how we teach and ideas for new topics and things like that with students and alumni. And so we're looking for people who have not just a change mindset, but also, hey, this is my program and I want to help build this entire ecosystem and continue to feed it with curriculum, with ideas, networks, things like that. So this one might be for the students. How many hours a week for commitment? Maybe our students can speak to how much work. they're too afraid to comment on how much work this is.
They're trying to figure out how to lie about.
This is Burton. It kind of depends on the course. I would say I probably spent more than the recommended amount of time for the data analytics courses. That just required a lot of reading. It was something new, but I think for courses where I had a little bit more work experience, for example, like the financial reporting course or internal audit, I was able to rely a lot on, my previous work experience and other qualifications. So it really depends on what your strengths are. But I would say on average, I don't know, anywhere from 10 hours a week, depending on the course, more so closer to when you have to submit a paper. Then for me, I found I put in even more time. But on average, preparing for the modules, about an hour or two a day, because there's quite a lot of pre-reading that you have to do before the commencement of the residential, so you can be familiar and up to date with what's going to be discussed in class. If you don't do the pre-reading before you attend the residential, you kind of miss out on the experience in terms of what's going to be delivered. Thanks.
I think on that point, could I just add in there, sorry John, before you go on, but just from the team's point of view, what we see very much, I think, Alan has referred to this community that we're building, but of course that extends to the way that our students work together. And I know there's a lot of support that goes on between them, which is absolutely how, in this community atmosphere, we would want it to be. So I think Burton's point about depending on your background, you will have certain strengths in certain areas, and other members of the cohort, it will be different. So there is absolutely no reason why you can't cooperate. And I think our students do cooperate very well to support each other and help each other, even on, individual projects. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there. I don't know if you'd all agree, but.
No, I think that's a great answer. And to piggyback off of Burton, when I went into the program, kind of the bar that was set was expect an average of about 10 hours a week. And I completely agree with Burton in the fact that it does vary depending on which courses you're taking and how close you are to the residential. So there were weeks where I would spend 4 to 6 hours, but there were other weeks where I would spend 15 to 20 leading up to the residential. But I think if you want to take an average and just put a number, I would say expect about 10 hours a week.
Could I, if there's nothing else on that point, could I circle back to Vijayas? I hope that's the right pronunciation. You had a question about scholarship and funding options, which I know Mike touched upon with our bursaries that we do offer, and I would encourage people to go to the website and have a look at those, as Mike said. It is also the case that, and again, you can find a link on the website, that the University of Cambridge itself does offer a number of scholarships to both full-time and part-time students, and there is actually a link on our website which takes you to a sort of it's a tool for finding which scholarships you can apply for, and we always encourage applicants to look at those very, very early on, because there are varying deadlines throughout the year. So sometimes some scholarships close quite early. And the value of the scholarships is from quite small to quite substantial. So that's another source of funding that you could look at. But I would stress that is distinct from the Master of Accounting programme, that those are awarded by the University of Cambridge or a college which is part of the University of Cambridge. So definitely worth a look. And if you've got any questions, I'd be very happy to help with that.
So Mike, do you want to answer how the program's delivered during the residential weeks? Is it case study or classroom teaching?
During the residential weeks, it's packed and it's intense and it's really energetic. And the answer is it's a combination. So there is classroom teaching, there's a lot of case discussion, there's a lot of debate, a lot of discussion, a lot of activities, and a lot of just interactive flavor to those in-person sessions. I'll open this up to any students who want to talk about, what the residential experience is really like. And also we have some questions about, have you had the chance to apply some of the things that you've learned, like Tableau and Python, and or other things, and then preparing for exams and sort of what that looks like. So I'll open this to some of our students who want to weigh in on this.
Hi, Mike. Maybe I can take this one from here. Hi, everyone. My name is Leanne. I'm classmate with Burton. I think, when we have our residential in Cambridge, I think it's always very engaging and interactive, where we also have key speakers coming in, chatting to us. And then we also have got sort of team activities, brainstorming ideas, and it's very engaging. And that's what I look forward to when I'm in Cambridge, is the action-packed week where, we have lectures and we have people to speak with. We really enjoy our coffee session when it's a break time, catching up with people's lives and haven't seen each other for like 3 months. So I really enjoy that bit very much. In terms of whether we get a chance to sort of use new technologies such as Python, Tableau, I can definitely affirm that in a way that, data analytics plays such an important role now in, accounting and finance field, especially in my role supporting a CFO in one of the investment banking out there. Having done the data analytics module over the past sort of term, I really appreciate that now when people talk about Alteryx or SQL, I'm able to sort of chip in and sort of share my view on things. And this topic just recently came up in my discussion with my CFO. It's just, constantly changing the environment where we just have to be flexible and adapt to changes. And that's where I think, having learned SQL, Python, it gives me the advantage over, people might just basically starting to pick up on data. And I think that adds on to my work. It adds value to what I'm doing. And I'm just really proud to be, studying the course, learning things ahead of people. I think that's really helpful. So I definitely, would emphasize that it's a great course. I definitely use these new technologies, and hopefully that brings in more opportunities for me to apply them in my daily work. Thanks.
Thanks, Leanne. Did Iris go ahead, Iris.
I'm just thinking the last question about the if they change the subjects of interest. I think well, for me, I think I really changed because at the beginning I thought maybe I'll just learn some accounting stuff and also the management skills and something like that and data analytics. But during the program, I think well, especially the change in management, I think we did like some project or something. So like we gave the like very how can I say the presentation about what we want to do in the to change in our lives or in the company or something like that. And I think I choose the topic. And I think I'll probably start thinking about to start my own business, something like that. I'm quite interested, and especially after a couple of terms, we joined the international competition, which is like business model based competition as well. And our team became one of the last finalists. We should be able to. We should have been to Canada to do the final competition, but because of the COVID, so it moved to online. But it was a very good experience. So because we have like accounting background and we can think the business in accounting perspective as well. So it really changed lots. I mean, not just accounting, but also the business sense and some other techniques as well. Yes. I'm not sure if I answered the question.
Thank you, Iris. I wanted to follow up on that too. So I speak a lot about trust and what trust means. And one of the elements of trust is that we value people's time, and we don't want to, this goes into how we even recruit and deal with admissions, we want to make sure that we can add value. And so many of our students will come in with wanting to do something within their current environment for work, and we'll kind of facilitate that. And most of our discussions will be around how can you improve work or improve your position in work. But as we find that many students will also change and they'll say, hey, I wanted to do something different. This has opened my mind up. With respect to the mentorship thing, one of the things we do is we tap into that and we identify potential career mentors. The whole purpose of the conference, as an example, is to bring in a whole network of potential career mentors. So if you are inspired, for example, to do climate reporting or sustainable finance, we've just brought together an entire cadre of some of the world's leading experts to the room and engaged you one-on-one with them or in small discussions. Cyber risk, you know, Lexi Wellman is also now a formal advisor to our program, and she could easily mentor somebody who's interested in sort of this intersection around risk in that context. And so the idea is that we will mentor. We want to hear what you are interested in doing. We want to add value, and so we'll actually pay attention. We'll try to bridge you into some of the networks where we can get career mentors and open up all kinds of opportunities. I know I've had conversations with people in this camera room about where they want to go, and some of the conversations are 5-10 year horizon type discussions.
Great. Does anyone else have any more questions? I'm conscious of your time and that we're nearing the end, but I think we have time for another question or so if anyone has one.
And while we're waiting, I want to make a plug for the CV reviews. So if you submit a CV, then Dr. Willis can start the dialogue, and a lot of this is assessment about, you know, why, what's this about, and a lot of this conversation can continue from there. And there's a website link where you can upload your CV and have just a candid conversation about that.
Okay, great. I think that's it for the questions. So let's wrap up. Thank you to all of you who attended, to our students. It was really great to see you. Thanks, Alan and Diane, for being here. Again, you know how to contact us. Please engage, and we'd love to answer any questions about your particular profile or career interests or anything else. So hope to hear from you again soon.